Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, October 1st. Derek Van Riper, Saris, Jed Lowry here with you as day 2 of the wild card round is about to get underway. On this episode, we take a quick look back at some takeaways from day 1 of the wild card action. Aces showed up for the most part. Tarik Skubal looked really good in that Tigers-Guardians game. We saw a good one between Max Fried and Garrett Crochet in the Bronx. Unfortunately for the Reds, Hunter Greene did not have his command. It did not work out for Cincinnati in game 1, at least. We'll see if they're able to rally back and extend the season in game 2 here on Wednesday night. But let's start in that Detroit-Cleveland series briefly, guys. Skubal's 14 strikeouts matched a Tigers franchise postseason record set by Joe Coleman in the 1972 ALCS. At this point, if you're the Tigers, you've got one more year of Skubal before he hits free agency. How do you not make a Garrett Cole contract level offer to Skubal just to see if you can keep him? Because there's a shot he's the back-to-back Cy Young Award winner. And even if he doesn't win it this year, he's still on that level. And to have a difference maker like that goes a very, very long way, especially this time of year, Jed.
Oh, and I think that would be a huge step backward for the organization. Obviously, that it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but just to have his presence, I think, as well. You never really know about pitching health, but I just think having his presence, his competitiveness, even if there is some sort of decline at the end of a contract like that, I want somebody in there in my clubhouse leading my pitching staff, setting an example for all the young guys. So I think this is a no-brainer for the Tigers. I just don't know what their budgetary constraints would be.
Yeah, he's such a big game pitcher. My God, like when they clinched, the Tigers put up an image of Skubal roaring. Right, that was the image they chose. So he is definitely a leader on this team, and I like that he's cerebral in terms of his work in between starts. He's very intentional and thinks really hard and is open to hearing things from the coaching staff. That's something you want from your leader, I think, just because you want everybody to be pulling on the chain in the same direction. So I think that, like, the likeliest outcome for me, given that he throws so hard, is something like a really good career with like a missing year or two. You know what I mean? It's just how pitching goes. And I think you just build that in where you say, okay, we sign him for 6 years, we get him for 5, and those 5 years are gonna be awesome. So I think that's just the price that you have to pay at this point in pitching, and I would gladly do it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's sat 99.
Yeah, I mean, it just like you listen to his interviews. He's very candid. He's not just going to give you some canned response. He's going to be thoughtful. He's going to give credit to. I listened to his interview after the game yesterday. He's given credit to everybody else but himself. And he's obviously a dominant force. Everybody knows that he's the one executing those pitches. But for a guy to be in that situation and recognize everybody else around him indicates strong leadership.
Yeah, face of the franchise right now. And maybe he wants to test free agency, get that opportunity. Sometimes just once in your career, you get to call that shot. So who knows if he would even accept that offer if the Tigers made it. But if you're the Tigers, I think you have to put that out there. Show that to your fans that you're serious, that you want to keep building around Tarik Skubal. The Guardians, insert your best jokes here about their lineup. Looking at their game 2 lineup, they will have Chase DeLauter. By the time you hear this podcast, you will have seen the big league debut of Chase DeLauter. He is starting in center field, and he hasn't played in a game since July, Jed. So the playoff debut, we've seen a few of those. I mentioned Alex Kirilloff and Adalberto Mondesi, 2 of the more recent examples. It's difficult enough. You talked about your big league debut, how fast your heart was beating, almost chasing a foul ball that was 20 rows back in the stands. Like,
correct.
How on earth are you supposed to calm your nerves well enough to make your big league debut in the playoffs and then layer on the fact that you have not played in a game since July?
Well, I believe, right? I believe in Stephen Vogt. I think Voter is going to prepare this kid as well as you can be prepared. And to go back to that Cleveland offense, you got nothing to lose, right? Like there's put this kid out there. He's one of your highly prized prospects. And see what he's got, because I don't think the offense that they're running out there right now leads to much confidence. I just, outside of Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan, there's just a lot of question marks. And you might as well give this kid a chance and see what he's got. It's one game, and you just hope that something bad doesn't happen and it's scarring. I don't think that's going to happen based on what I've read and heard about the kid. But you got nothing to lose in my view.
To that point, I mean, the Guardians, to insert your favorite TV product here, like Mighty Putty might be holding this lineup together right now.
Oof.
George Valera is in the number 2 spot today. I mean, former prospect. He's dealt with lots of injuries. Manzardo, our guy in the cleanup spot, he's been there all year. It's kind of like Kwan, Ramirez, Manzardo, Naylor are the 4 names you're used to. Gabriel Arias, an utility guy starting at short, DeLauter in center. CJ Kafis, who came up midseason at first, and Brian Rocchio rounding things out at the bottom. We'll see if the Guardians can stave off elimination. I wanted to ask you.
One last thing about this, though. They hit 3 balls out of the infield, and only one of them was hard hit. That was the Cal Manzardo single for 106 miles an hour. I mean, 3 balls out of the infield is just, it's not enough, man.
They still had the game-tying run on third base in the 9th inning against Will Vest. We still had that tension where we're all watching going, how is this going to happen? How on earth are they going to find a way to scrape out a second run and possibly win that game?
I mean, this is a team that ended with a negative run differential and won the division. I mean, I don't, I should have asked you guys to look into this, or asked, somebody to look into this. Like, has that ever happened? A negative run differential and winning the division? I could understand sneaking into the playoff, through a wild card position, but winning a division with a negative run differential is amazing to me. I don't think I've ever seen it, and I would be interested to see the history books and see if it's ever happened.
If I get the shifty eyes here in the next few minutes, because I'm doing a stat head search while we're talking, trying to see if it has happened before, because now I must know. I wanted to ask you about this. Daniel Palencia seems like a really important piece in that Cubs bullpen, because you think about the hitters he faced and the way he was used. He closed for most of the year, had a shoulder injury in September, comes into the game, enters in the 5th, finishes that for Matthew Boyd, and then comes back in the 6th, right against the heart of that San Diego lineup. And in between his outings, or in between his innings, the Cubs hit back-to-back homers to take a lead. So it seems like not only is Palencia their most important reliever, that Craig Counsell and the Cubs want to lean on him in a really sort of aggressive way.
I'm sorry, I did the shifty eye thing. 5 teams have won their division with a negative run differential, including the 2007 Arizona Diamondbacks, the 1987 Minnesota Twins. Was that the worst to first?
87.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe?
No, 97 was worst to first. No, 87. I think that might have been worst to first. 1984 Kansas City Royals, 1997 San Francisco Giants, and the 2021 Seattle Mariners, as my search says. So not too many teams, not too often, but every once in a while it happens.
Yeah.
Back to
Palencia.
The 1986 Twins did not finish last. The Mariners took last. They were a 6th place team instead of a 7th place team at that time.
I just remember that the Twins played the Braves in the worst of first World Series.
That was in the 90s. Yep.
That was 90s. Okay.
So Palencia, really important to the Cubs, right? We knew when he went down that might put a lot of pressure on some of their other relievers, and guys like Kittredge and Brad Keller have stepped up, and they ended up being the late inning guys in the win over the Padres in Game 1. But the way Craig Counsell used Daniel Palencia, I thought was really interesting, and probably a sign of things to come if the Cubs continue to move ahead this postseason.
Yeah, I saw somebody say that, they were using Daniel Palencia, where he was because, he wasn't one of their top 3 pitchers. And I was like, I don't think that's why. I think that was, using him against the heart of the order to maintain a lead and thinking that the other three guys could finish it off, against weaker competition. Now, of course, I think Kittredge had to face the middle of the lineup. Or no, Keller. Keller faced the middle of the lineup in the ninth. So he had to trust somebody other than Daniel Palencia. But I think that was about Palencia going for length against the heart of the order in the middle of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the lineup the Padres are running out there too. I mean, you got O'Hearn, Sheets, and Cronenworth batting back to back in that lineup. You're going to save Pomeranz for that spot. So I think just given how, given what Boyd gave them and where he ended up, coming through the 2 times through the order, I think that was the plan from the beginning. They regardless of what happened, unless it was, unless he was getting knocked out of there earlier, I don't think they were planning on Boyd getting more than 2 times through the order. And then it was probably that was probably the plan from the beginning. As soon as he gets through that second time, Palencia is ready to face Tatis, Arise, and Machado.
Yeah, I think it's all after the game, and not all of these things occurred to me during the game. But I would say that I did not think that Mike Shildt managed a heck of a game. I know that Freddie Fermin is maybe not as good of a hitter as those other 3 lefties, but I would at least try to break that 3 in a row up. And I know you wish you had Ramon Laureano. I understand, but I put Fermin, ahead. I put Sheets 9 and put Fermin 7 or something. Just break it up a little bit so it's not so easy to attack that. The other thing I didn't like was Jackson Merrill does a bunt. And he costs. I did make an image, but I don't know if we're going to use it. But I made one that I called badbunt.jpg that I sent to to Derek, and it reduced their win percentage by 5 percentage points. So they went from getting close to 40% win percentage. It was a big swing in the wrong direction at the wrong time. And not only did Jackson Merrill do that, and I would suggest that he did that because the Padres have led the league in sacrifice bunts this year, and so they've created this atmosphere of like, this is what we do. I know that the cleanup hitter for the Padres hasn't done it a lot before, but you do, like, for example, Luis Arias had 2 sacrifice hits before this year. He had 12 this year. So it's like, that's your 2 hitter. So you are creating the atmosphere like, it's cool. We bunt. That's what we do. We play small ball. And then after the game, when asked about it, he just said, yeah, that was just Jackson, and he didn't say like, that was just Jackson, but that's what we've done all year and it's worked for us. Mm-hmm. He just sort of said that was Jackson. And I'm like, yo, you can't just let him out to the dry when it's like your philosophy that he was putting in place. Maybe he didn't get the sign from you, but come on, just be like, that was Jackson. So there was a couple things there that I didn't like about what Mike Shildt did in that game. But, the other thing that he said was like, oh, we got our sacrifice fly with 2 outs. Yeah, but you wouldn't have had 2 outs if you hadn't done the bunt. Like it ended up being that out was precious. If they'd had 1 extra out, they would have scored a run. So I'm not so into the bunt thing. And just the way that all went down made me feel pretty silly about my Padres pick in the World Series now.
After one day. It took 1 day.
Well, because it was all the things I was worried about. No power. They bunted, they did weird things. I don't know, with the lineup.
Especially when you have a guy like Jackson Merrill who is capable of what he's capable of. It's on the flip side of that too. Like, you look at like Pete Crow Armstrong bunting in an 0-2 count or attempting a bunt in an 0-2 count. And, I was told that he's been successful in doing that. I haven't watched every single one of his at-bats this year, so I've told he's been successful in doing that. But that kind of points to I don't know if it's a total lack of confidence, but if you're not feeling good about yourself, if you're up there in an 0-2 count trying to get trying to bunt. And I think
and at least that one almost
whoever,
makes more sense than Jackson Merrill, because Jackson Merrill is a contact hitter, that's up with a guy on base. Let's go. Let's score some runs. Let's not just get him over.
Right. Well, I mean, but both young players are very capable of doing damage, and so I just I guess I worry a little bit about the mentality of both of those players right now, or the confidence level of both of those players right now to be bunting in those situations.
Yeah,
I think to Eno's point too, like even if Jackson Merrill ultimately decided to do that on his own, Schilt not adding that bit about us having that as a philosophy really did kind of leave him out there to dry. And that's, I'd expect that from a first-time manager, not from someone who has managed previously, as Mike Schilt has. So that was a bit
well, maybe he was
surprising.
mad about it. I mean, maybe it was Schilt was mad about it. But like, listen, that's your chicken's coming home to roost a little bit, dude. I think you didn't want your cleanup hitter to do that. Then you should have been clear about that. Yes, we bunt, but maybe not the cleanup hitter, please.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get to some of the other games from the slate, the games that you'll actually be able to watch tonight by the time you hear this podcast, because those two matinees will be in progress and possibly over by the time a lot of folks get to listen. So we wanted to do a little deeper dive on Yankees-Red Sox. Game one goes to Boston. Masataka Yoshida, the surprising hero in that one, coming off the bench. 2-run single in the 7th inning. I thought the Yankees actually had a pretty good opportunity against Aroldis Chapman. It loaded the bases in the 9th with nobody out and didn't score. And I thought to myself, that's pretty odd. We don't usually see that, at least on the big stage. And as Eno found, we never see that happen in the postseason.
Oh, yeah. Stats Perform said that the Yankees are the first team in MLB postseason history to have the bases loaded with nobody out in the bottom of the 9th and not score a run and lose the game, which actually is really surprising to me because that seems like something you see during the regular season. But I think there's a couple things going on here. One is that when you see it happen during the regular season, it's probably not a very good offense. Not very good offenses don't usually make the postseason. So that's part of it. The other thing is the regular season is just a collection of much larger samples than the postseason. The postseason is a few games per team per year. And so something like this could happen. But I was surprised that had never happened before. And it led to this chart, which we can read differently. Me and Jed read this a little bit differently. I like this because Aroldis this year has not done many multiple innings. And so he got out there and he was throwing like 96. And, everyone's like, what is going on? And I thought maybe he's saving himself. He definitely got to 100 in that inning. And Jed, you had a slightly different read on what was going on there with that velocity.
I think he looked around and saw the situation. I don't know if I can say this, but in my mind, or in his mind, I think he's thinking, "Oh, like I better start letting this thing eat."
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's been a lot made of his kind of newfound command this year. So maybe it was about, hey, I don't want to come in here and walk anybody,
right?
So let me just find the zone. But the best walk rate of his career, and so maybe sometimes that means dialing it down. But yeah, I think in the end, when you need to get out of it, it was about the velo.
Yeah. And I think he's the guys that he was facing in those moments, in those at bats as well, right? I think it was he gave up the 3 hits to the guys that were I would say have a more balanced approach, and then Giancarlo, Jazz, and then who was the third? Trent Grisham. And that's just, Trent, that's a tough at bat for a lefty. And so, I think that they were in that situation. And I think the statistic is just as much about Chapman as it is about the Yankees in this as well. But, to your point of the coming home to roost, those are the moments where you have to be able to, really be mindful of your intent. right? Like we don't need a grand slam in this moment. You're facing Aroldis Chapman. He's had an outstanding year. He's still got the high velo. Like we don't need three guys to come up here and try to hit grand slams. We need to try to get a couple of base hits here
let it
to
travel,
keep this line, keep this line moving.
Yeah, let it travel, see it, put the short swing on it,
Yeah, and it's not
it
like you're not going up there with the quote unquote short swing. I hate that. I'm just saying intent, right? Like instead of trying to hit the grand slam off of Aroldis Chapman, hit a line drive off of Aroldis Chapman, right? Because and then if you get your pitch, the line drive turns into a double or a home run. It's just that's the difference in intent right there. And like I said, I am not suggesting that you need to like shorten up and just like pound the ball into the ground, because that leads to a double play, right? With virtually, Jazz and Trent run better than Giancarlo, but if Stan hits a ground ball, it's a double play. I mean, unless it gets through the infield, it's a double play.
Well, I mean, Grisham struck out on a ball.
Yep.
Jazz saw 3-4 perfectly placed pitches.
Yeah. Right. That's why I said it was just as much about Chapman in those at bats, right? And Chapman really locking in. So I do think that, but once again, like that, you know who you're facing on the mound, and you have this guy who's had arguably the best year of his career, still with high velocity. If you go up there and think like, I'm going to get him right here, I mean, you like that's the result you see, and they had the success on just getting guys on, and so now all of a sudden it appeared that the intent was different than the first three. Is all I'm saying. Like the intent should in that moment has to be, we just got to keep this line moving. The guy we're facing right now has been dominant all year. He's throwing 101 tonight. Like let's just keep this line moving.
Yeah, it points to maybe some managerial choices that also led to that moment. Because if I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, Jazz actually tried to pull a slider on the outer half, because he flied out to Wilyer Abreu on a slider in the outer half. So if he had come up there with maybe a little bit more of a let me see this ball deeper and go the other way philosophy, there could have been even a fly out to the other side that was deeper, or, something that could have played it a run. Right. And maybe he would have not swung at it if he'd like let it go further. But yeah, Jazz is also up there against the lefty, which was a main source of conversation after the game. He was talking to reporters and didn't really turn around to voice his displeasure at not being in the lineup against Garrett Crochet and a lefty at the beginning. And so there were some complaints about his demeanor with the press and how he composed himself. I don't really care that much about that because he is one of their top players, and of course he's going to be disappointed. And I don't actually know if the right decision was made, but just to unpack that a little bit further. So first of all, you have your sort of lefty-righty decision. If we're going to just analyze sort of Ahmed Rosario against Jazz Chisholm, what you would say, I know that Ahmed Rosario, DVR, you pointed out, has been running sort of 120 WRC pluses against lefties for a while.
He's been every single year of his career, he's been an above average hitter by WRC plus against lefties. So you have the
120 in particular, you wouldn't necessarily rely on projection wise because that's a small sample and it's against lefties. So he would have faced more righties, and for his career, he's like an 85 WRC plus against righties. So you would expect him to be about a 95 to 100 WRC plus against lefties. That's what projections would say. So 100 WRC plus against lefties for him, and then you have Jazz, who overall has been a 110 WRC plus guy. You would expect him to be almost a similar guy against lefties, 95 to 100.
That's what he's been the last 2 years. He's been at least in that range.
So you could say that's the wrong decision because Jazz is your guy and his upside is better, you go with Jazz. So the one last wrinkle that I just discovered, though, is that Ahmed Rosario's swing plane is flatter. And I didn't notice this, but Ahmed Rosario is swinging the bat faster than he has his whole career, or at least since we've been tracking it. So bat speed is similar, but, flatter swing. Righty with a flatter swing against a lefty with a scoopier swing. If you didn't have the names on the back of the jerseys, you would pick Ahmed Rosario.
Well, I'll pose it differently. Is the question Rosario versus Chisholm, or is it Rosario versus Caballero in the lineup? Because I fully support the idea of putting Rosario in the lineup.
Or Ryan McMahon. I mean, there's different. Yeah,
if you're talking about 3 trade deadline acquisitions in McMahon, and then you got Jazz, who's been there and has a 30-30 season for you. I'm riding the horse that got me there, and if I'm making the decision versus the trade line acquisitions, I'm picking Rosario, and he's playing third base. And so then you got Caballero to kind of play any position off the bench, and McMahon
Jazz
left-handed
over Ryan
bat.
McMahon, I guess. Yeah, you'd have Jazz over Ryan McMahon because Jazz is better and plays second base. And I think the other thing that's lost here is that if you put Jazz in the beginning, even if it's not the greatest choice, put him in 8th or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, put him lower in the lineup.
Right.
But he's in the field and playing and warm. Right. So instead of sort of coming off the bench to face Aroldis Chapman, he's been in the game. And in fact, he's been seeing lefties all game. So, in this other universe, maybe he actually does something different against Chapman in the 9th because he's been in the game, because he's been playing. So,
yeah, it was, like I said, it's one of these, it was a little odd to me because usually those type of matchup decisions are made over the course of the season to get you to the playoffs. And once the playoffs are there, you kind of let the guys that are, the best players, the quote unquote
I think that's
best players.
Increasingly different though, because today we've got Shota Imanaga playing against the Padres, and he's had an opener in front of him.
Right, because you want Kittredge to face Tatis and Machado. You're guaranteeing one matchup for Kittredge.
I get it. I'm just saying. I think you've been right in the past, but I think increasingly what we're seeing is people dialing in even on this level in the postseason. So
yeah, I just sorry. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I'm not disregarding the numbers and the projections on that. I'm just saying from a as a collective unit and a team building and making sure that everybody's on the same page. If you got a 30-30 guy sitting on the bench, I think it's hard. It's hard for me to justify as a decision, even if he's facing a tough lefty. That's a tough one for me.
Yeah, I also think there's a little bit of CYO. You're a little bit cover your own a little bit because. That the story is going to be that you didn't play Jazz if you don't play him. They left Jazz and Rice on the bench, and everyone that was the tweet. 150 RBI and 60 homers on the bench.
I think the spot to use literally anybody off the bench, like Ben Rice for Caballero in the 8th when they brought Chapman in, even though you are going lefty, who gives you a better chance of making something really good happen? Caballero or Ben Rice? The answer, undoubtedly, in the 8th inning, is Ben Rice. Even if Ben Rice just gets burned as a pinch hitter and then Ryan McMahon comes in and finishes the game defensively at third base, I think you have to take that shot. And some people are going to say, why didn't Jason Dominguez come in? He's a switch hitter. Jason Dominguez has not hit lefties yet in the big leagues. I don't know if he will someday. Small sample size.
It hasn't happened yet.
But so you look at his career body of work.
He's effectively a lefty for you.
Right. He's got a 186, 276, 254 so far against lefties in the big leagues with a 31% K rate. So that probably wasn't the option. But I think Ben Rice was the choice, given that you had McMahon available to come in and play defense. That to me
nobody's
sits as a strange choice.
Itching to bring a lefty out to face Chapman instead of a righty. I don't know. These choices so far, I could see coming down on Boone's side. The only one is maybe, Jazz versus Caballero, I guess. I think
that's the one. That's
Jazz's
the bigger one.
Dynamism, and just rather have that on offensive dynamism. I'd rather have that on there. But the other one that this one I definitely come down on Boone's side. There was a question of if he took Fried out too early, and I know when you look backwards, you say, "Oh, he took Fried out too early because he put Weaver in, and that was the game," But the problem is Weaver, and then you put that up against Crochet and say, "Well, the Red Sox left Crochet in." Well, Crochet threw a 100-mile-an-hour pitch for his 117th pitch of the game. Fried was down 3 ticks in his last inning.
Yeah,
he went from 96 to 93. So I just don't think it's comparable. Like, as good as Fried has been this year, Crochet is the one that's, I can't comment on that one. I have a vote in that one, but may win hardware, I'll say. Fried's not going to, I don't think will win the hardware. So I think there's a little difference in quality. And then if you just look at pitch quality in the inning where you make the decision, I think he made the right decision to say, thanks, Fried, you did a great job. We're going to turn this over to the bullpen. At some point, you have to trust your bullpen. So
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think that was a mistake.
And we for all that Weaver did last year in the playoffs, he hasn't been the same guy this year. But you got to pick somebody down there, right? And he's still throwing hard. He still has these other pitches. He just hasn't executed to the same level he did last year. And unfortunately, that one didn't go his way.
The other thing that people will quote now is that 12 times we've done this 3-game wild card series, and 12 times game 1 winner has won it. There is a post by Ben Resnick, that's RESNIC with an underscore at the end, where he did the math on like how likely it was. And if you just assume that the home team was 65% likely to win these games, which that's pretty aggressive, but it just says you just assume that, then the likelihood that a game 1 winner would win 12 series like they have is 1 in 5. So that's within the realm of possibility. So 1 in 5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like oh my God, like this is crazy, and it's also not like this is going to continue. Right. A 1 in 5 suggests that like this is going to change in the future. Somebody is going to win 2 games in a row. It sounds hard, but it's really not that hard. And I don't think there's anything about the format that suggests that, they can't do it. So somebody that lost game 1, I think this year, somebody that lost game 1 is going to win their series. And it could be the Yankees still.
That's it reminds me of the Major League quote, right? Like, win 2 games in a row. It has been done before.
Right. Yeah.
And win one more, it's called a winning streak.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I thought you were going to go with 60% of the time it works every time.
But you're sending Rodon up there, and if you win game 2, they're sending Bayo up there in game 3 against Cam Schlittler. I'm taking Cam Schlittler, although it'll be a whole staff situation at that point. But I think, you could get this to game 3, and then game 3 could be a pick'em almost.
Yeah, I think so. I think this will be the year that a team that lost in game 1 will advance. I don't know which one. I'm not going to make a prediction because it will age like sushi.
I'm not picking the Reds.
No? You're not picking the Reds? Yeah. I think when that game, it was 8-0, I think, at the time when you texted us, and you said, I want to repick everything. And I said, why? Is it the snowman on the screen right now? Like, look, the Dodgers do this sometimes. Like, great teams can hit aces. Hunter Greene
did show their
warts
command after that text.
They really did, right? I mean, they weren't using their current A relievers. So I think you do take that, with the necessary grain of salt. But Edgardo Henriquez and Jack Dreyer did everything they could to make it interesting. The Reds were 1 swing away from making it a 1-run game in the 8th inning. And unfortunately, Ke'Bryan Hayes was the person who had that 1 swing. And I think Tyler Stevenson had a shot at it too and struck out on a pitch below the zone.
there's video of Terry like reacting to Brian Hayes' at bat, and I put it in the Discord and I said, "What's he saying?" But it looks like cuss words, but I'm interested in like the pronouns involved. Like, is he mad that he didn't put in Will Benson or I don't know who else he had on the bench, but those were lefties, right?
He had Santiago Espinal as an option, who's another righty that can play third base. Like, why would you do that? Everything Espinal does is the same or worse than Brian Hayes, and then you're worse off defensively at third base. So
I'm guessing the pronoun was me. F me.
I got nothing. I have no button to press here. There's nothing I can do in this situation.
I have distinct memories of those words coming out of Tito's mouth. So,
totally possible.
Very plausible.
Really impressive outing from Blake Snell. I did see that they had Emmett Sheehan getting loose if that 8th inning got a little more out of control, and they did use Blake Trinan with a 5-run lead in the 9th. Trinan looked kind of like typical Trinan. That's probably a good sign.
Some good velo
too.
From him.
Yeah, had pretty good command of that 2-seamer. So I think there's a few things sort of falling into place for that Dodgers bullpen, even though they made their fans sweat that out a bit more than they probably needed to in that instance.
There was a little bit of a weird media mishap that happened at the first. So if you were watching on the MLB.com app, they did not switch from ESPN2 to ESPN in time. And so you remember the first pitch of the game is a 100-mile-an-hour heater from Hunter Greene, and it's a 118-mile-an-hour homer from Shohei Ohtani. So people that were watching on the MLB app missed that because they did not switch over in time. Now, just a little side piece, because this is, another reason that I hate social media. Someone tagged me in a post saying like, hey, this is like, screw ESPN. This is what happened. They thought it was ESPN's fault. And the thing that got switched over, and on ESPN2, what they were doing was reporting on the WNBA finals. So it looked like to people that were watching that they had just switched away from the first pitch of the game to do breaking news of the NBA and WNBA finals. And so this person tweeted about it and was angry about it and tagged me, and it got picked up by the algorithm because it looked like it was WNBA and ESPN and Disney and all the big baddies in one tweet. And like, oh my God, my social media was a mess. Everybody, like it turned into this political quagmire where everyone's calling everybody idiots. And I had to just mute the conversation because I was like, I can't handle this. I was like, it's just a small mistake by the MLB app that they didn't switch over in time. There was no baseball on ESPN2 at this moment. It wasn't a choice to show WNBA over baseball, but because the Twitter algorithm picked it up, it was viral.
I mean, I was listening to it. I was coming back from a baseball practice, so I was listening to the game. And when I, we got out of the car, I'm with my son, and I wanted to see the highlight of it, and so rewinding the game, and I experienced the same thing, and was just thinking, oh boy, this is not going to go
make
well.
people angry.
This is not, and sure, group texts, all these things about, we're cutting to WNBA finals games on Ohtani homers, and oh God, that's Pandora's
But it
box
wasn't
right there.
A grand conspiracy by
exactly.
ESPN.
I know.
It was just like MLB app messed up, But it does suck. I mean, I'm sorry you missed it, because that also reminds me of this. This cartoon was written, and this cartoon is the answer to what would happen if a pitcher threw at 90% of the speed of light. And so this physicist actually worked it out and said that the ball would create a sort of X-ray front of plasmized air, and there would be this developing fireball behind it because it's almost at the speed of light. The pitcher would be disintegrating as soon as he let go of the ball, and the batter, as soon as he made contact with the ball, would create a sort of antimatter moment that would destroy the whole stadium. And the physicist, of course, ends with, according to rule blah blah blah, in the rule book, the batter would be considered hit by pitch and be awarded first base.
But the stadium was vaporized, basically. So So really, getting awarded first base in this instance wouldn't matter. The shame is that you spend all that time at tread or drive line to throw at 90% the speed of light, and then you disintegrate yourself when you throw the pitch. All that hard work, you don't even get to see it.
There's a few allegories in this, I think. Some lessons to be learned. But, the Red Sox, by the way, threw 17 of the 18 pitches thrown over 98 miles an hour, according to Tony Maserati in the game last night. Hunter Greene, on the other hand, threw hard, but Shohei Ohtani's bat speed won out. I mean, the lineup just looks so good. That's what I was worried about when I texted you, was like, oh gosh, they're going to score a lot of runs. But later on, in the game, you're like, okay, the bottom of the lineup, not quite as good as the top of the lineup. And then, the relievers came in and started to show some warts. So, I think I think I could still see the Dodgers not making it to the World Series. But there's been a lot of conversation in different places, like all, in the Discord, and we on the podcast yesterday were talking about how everyone's picked the Phillies and no one's picked the Dodgers.
Phillies, Mariners.
And there's different theories. One of the theories is, well, everyone wants to be pre-smart. Wants to be smarter. It's funny because then everyone wants to be smarter, so nobody picked the chalk. And nobody's like, what about the Dodgers? But, so I think that's an interesting theory to me, because it's more about groupthink than it is about the Dodgers themselves. It's like, if we looked at the Dodgers, we could easily see the first, second, or third best lineup in the lineup in the playoffs, plus the first or second best starting pitchers, and then enough starting pitcher depth to maybe cover their bullpen issues, which has been done in the past. We've seen Rangers, we've seen D-backs, we've seen other teams take starters, put them in the bullpen, and profit.
And they all did it with a lot less firepower with the starters they had available when they did it. So, Dodgers, by comparison, Blake Snell, really good.
Really
won 9 Ks, 19 swinging
great
strikes.
Command.
Yeah.
Great
when
command.
you say great command about Blake Snell, the final line usually turns out really good, just like it did on Tuesday night.
And now you're running out Yamamoto in game 2.
Yeah.
Life is good, I think, if you're a Dodgers fan now. But I'm not waffling. I still think, as the Dodgers advance, I think the Phillies are going to get them. I think the Phillies have just a little bit more on that lineup that can do damage.
Pick looks immaculate.
Hey, you know what? We got games about to start. We're going to blink, and it could all look very different tomorrow, right? That's the best thing about playoff baseball. It could all look a lot different tomorrow. One last note on our way out the door. I did see Brian Snitker out as manager in Atlanta. He was offered an advisory role to remain in the organization, so a lot like the Bruce Bochy situation in Texas. But we talked about some of the vacancies, the Rangers, the Twins, the Giants. Atlanta, number 1 on that list, Jed, as far as managerial vacancies that we know about so far this offseason?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talent there. I mean, you could say the Rangers would be another one. A lot of young talent there with some, pitching. I guess it depends on the health of, Eovaldi and DeGrom really moving forward. But you got to put Atlanta at the top of that list as a desirable location. Not only from a talent perspective, but the organization has the resources to go out and make the team better. So I think that the both of those clubs will be highly competitive in terms of the desire to want to manage them.
Yeah. There's some. Jeff Passan is reporting that it was Snitker's choice, but the press release is kind of coldly worded. So I don't know if we'll ever know the full truth on how they made that decision. But I think one of the things I'm interested to see is if the next manager does more load management, if they are as aggressive about playing their guys every day. There's also some decisions. I wonder how much the the one thing about Shelton that people were saying in Pittsburgh was that he was involved in, front office hires and front office decisions going upwards, so that's a toggle, I think, that is different from manager to manager and front office to front offices. How much is the manager a part of the front office, and how much are they field staff, and how sort of separated are those things? And I'm interested. You have Mike Fast there, who's from the Astros. I think he's about integrating analytics into all facets of the game, and but you also have Anthopoulos, who's been a little bit more of an aggressive. We'll do the roster building, I think, and you do the managing. I think that's what his manager choices have been in the past.
Yeah, I do think the load management aspect of that comes down to some roster construction as well. So could go hand in hand with what Alex
because they haven't built
to do
the biggest depth there, right? It's always the depth has always been sort of waiver wire acquisition. It hasn't been like, we're going to sign an extra player. It's more about we're just going to find extra players, and that's why we really want to play our starters, because our backup first baseman is not very good.
My guess is that with Marcell Ozuna's contract finally being up, they have a floating DH now, and they can reallocate some of that money toward a more versatile bench player or two, and then actually afford at least some lovely days in the DH spot to guys that will otherwise have at least a partial day off. So we'll see where it goes from here, but game's about to start. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. Enjoy the games. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.